And not, but thank you so much. If I could, the meeting started at 7:33 and the minutes of the previous meeting was voted on and passed.
6:33.
So
5:33.
5:33.
it's on the record.
Well, there's only a 2-hour difference there.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, first item on the agenda is the budget report.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, budget report. This is pretty much going to be the last budget report for the last fiscal year. And what I would say is that it's not officially closed, so there may be some numbers that change. We finished the year way well above in total revenue. Part of that was the rollover. A big majority of that was the rollover and the miscellaneous income. So we did really well there. We even did well on what we expected otherwise as well, as far as license fees and citations and recycling. So we're doing well in the revenue category. In expenses category, we only expended 72% of what our budget was so far. We may have some, well, I know that we will have additional items that come into this. As I've told you guys the last several meetings, we've got a vendor that we have issues with paying. I would have thought that they would have posted by now, but it's a significant number. I think somewhere in the area of 130,000. So that would bring us closer to where we would expect it. So with that, where we're sitting right now, we have a balance that includes the rollover of $2,770,067.
Okay, thanks. Are there any questions or comments of Pete? If I remember from past meetings, that vendor is the household hazardous waste vendor.
Yes, Veolia Environmental. Yes.
Okay, hearing no questions, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, Pete.
Yes, that's going to be correspondence to the board. The first one is Jerry McGraw, attorney at law. We've received a letter from Jerry to the board, and I sent it out in the packet for people to review before the meeting. Do you wish for me to read this into the record, or does anybody want to have questions? Or if Jerry is here, does he want to speak to it instead of it being read into record?
I'm assuming all the board members received a copy of it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I would suggest that we could just attach it to the meeting minutes. I mean, I don't know why we have to read it again. We probably all read it in our email, so.
Yeah, that works for me.
Jerry is in the audience tonight. Would it be appropriate to ask him to speak to it if he had anything additional?
If he so desires, that's fine.
I would simply say I'll try to make this letter cover pretty well my thoughts. I have concerns about the extent to which we might end up with, Pete uses that phrase contracting, but I think anytime we take a service and we restrict who can use it, whether it's franchise, contract, or otherwise, it creates some issues. And my concern is I don't think that's to the advantage of the people of Jefferson County. So I tried to put everything in the letter to cover my thoughts on that.
All right. Thank you very much for the letter and your thoughts on the matter. Was there was two pieces? Oh yeah, there's two pieces of correspondence.
Yes, the other one you received late, and this was received, and it's regarding House Bill 453, which is changes to the Open Meetings Act. I believe that in this Open Meetings Act, so that I can go through this, it basically says that virtual meetings are now a permanent option for conducting public meetings. It also further says that any member participating in a public meeting must remain both visible and on camera and audible at all times that business is being conducted. It says that if a meeting is virtual, it can now be considered a regular meeting if it takes place on the same time and date as originally scheduled. And the effective date of this change to law was July 14th of 2022. I put the memo out for everybody to see if anybody has any questions to that, or if their interpretation is a little bit different, please let me know. But I think that summarizes the House bill pretty well.
So Pete, I have two questions. I don't know if Peter Irwin is here or if you just know this, but when it says that we have to be visible all the time, so what happens when you're sharing your screen? We can't see anyone.
It's a good question that I will have to get answered. I will take this time to point out that Peter Irvin is no longer with Metro Government.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I found that out today. So I will take that back and try to get an answer for you, Mary Rose. So,
Well, and the second question, does that mean we can't ever put ourselves on mute during the meeting to cover up background noise, or can we just be available for audio? It just seems to me that if 7 people have their mute turned off for the whole meeting, that we're going to get a lot of background noise.
okay. I got both of those items listed as a question, and I'll try to get us an answer.
Yeah, I think that second question of Mary Rose's is particularly pertinent because you can have some ambient background noise that really you can tell from time to time it's feeding into people's feed, and people do, if they realize it's going on, they do shut it off. But they're still there in the meeting, and they're obviously not saying anything. But that is an interesting question.
Agreed. And that would conclude that item on the agenda.
And I guess the practical matter of that is that when we send out a notice, it is no longer a special meeting, and therefore there are none of the restrictions that might be applied to it because it was a special meeting. It then becomes just a regular meeting, and all of the open meetings issues and everything else that apply to a regular meeting then apply to the virtual meeting.
Yes, I would agree with that. And we still do have the special meeting exemption if it's not on our regular time and date that was announced
Right.
in our bylaws.
I took this as excellent news for boards. I mean, I think it's a good law. It just needs to be clarified.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, anything else under the correspondence?
No, sir.
All right, action items? You have none?
No action items.
Okay, old business.
Well, I just wanted to update everybody. The last meeting, I stated that I would be getting in contact. Well, we were trying to be in contact with the state on the 5-year plan because we had a few questions about process of developing a 5-year solid waste management plan. We had a very short meeting with them, Karen and I did, and they are in the process of doing site visits, and they are going to be coming to Louisville soon to basically go over process from anything that they changed and since the last 5-year plan was done. So we will be meeting with them soon once they're here and just kind of reviewing the whole process. Second part of that is that uh, on the old business is the 109 board retreat. And what I would still say is that I feel like that we need to meet with them to get a clarification on timeframes before we set our retreat date. So that would, unless anybody has any questions of me, that's really the only thing that I had on those two items.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Bob?
uh, would it not be a good time in order to ask for an extension of the time frame in order to have 60, 90 days more to work on the 5-year plan? I've got some concerns about that, especially the way it seems like we're rushing through some of the issues and especially with the advisory committee. And now I see that possibly, do I take it that the advisory committee for the 9th has been canceled? It's not on the announcements.
I talked with Bruce about this earlier, and it's not canceled. It's just not scheduled. And we was just not gonna, because this is a process and we're still doing things, we want to get a little bit closer to time. And all Bruce has to do is call it, and we will set up that meeting. So it's not canceled. It's never really been formally established, but it's easily established if the 109 board or the advisory committee chair wants to make that so.
Do you have a time for this site visit from Division of Waste Management?
I'm working on that. I've sent an email to Deborah DeLong, who is that person, and trying to get confirmation, hopefully this Friday.
And do you know, just out of curiosity, do you know, are they doing site visits for every county or?
Yes. In our short conversation, I emphasized that Jefferson County, Louisville Metro was in, a little bit different process, a little bit different than most of the other counties out in the state. She agreed. And the topic of an extension is definitely going to be on the one of the things that is going to be approached so that we can hopefully get that extension.
Mr. Chairman, can I expand on that?
Sure.
It's one of the things that I wanted to discuss today in regards to, it seems like we are missing some important issues and concepts by a rushed atmosphere in regards to getting the plan done. I think it's very important that we do ask and hopefully succeed in getting an expansion. As an example, I know that Pete's very busy and Karen, but one of the issues that is important to a lot of stakeholders and especially people that are very familiar with the program and so forth is the whole idea of the issue of getting the presentations in time in order to be able to concentrate and be able to discuss in good fashion as far as what is on the agenda and what is part of the presentation. And let me give you an example. The last advisory committee, the meeting was at 4 p.m., just like it always is. And the presentation was not handed out until 35 minutes before that meeting. So basically, you had 35 minutes in order to prep for the meeting. And, for busy individuals and people that have other jobs besides the 109 board, a lot of times the 35 minutes can't even be used in regards to reviewing the process. The issue with that particular meeting, I think, was that it was the first meeting in which the section in regards to the implementation and action planning process was advanced. And that probably is one of the most important pieces of the whole 5-year plan, as far as I'm concerned. So basically what you had was an idea that, you know, the introduction to the first draft of the 5-year plan, as far as the action planning goes, was directed by, you know, one person or a group of person or the staff. And the committee didn't have a chance in order to review it, nor did any of the participants that were part of that was part of the committee that was really interested in regards to looking forward to how the action plans were going to be taken and where they were going. I think the problem that is that, you know, it didn't allow the members and stakeholders with possibly opposing viewpoints that was in the action plans to prepare and to get their thoughts together in order to make those opposing viewpoints known and directed and making a conscious decision on what to go forward with. But one of the other ones, and I think this is the main issue, is that it didn't allow stakeholders that were possibly would be interested in the action plans and in that particular piece, then probably would want to either explain their position or go forward with their own viewpoints. They weren't even able to know what was going on because we didn't get the information quick enough. And I think that's truly a situation that needs to be addressed. And one of the options that I had is knowing how busy everything was, is to go ahead right away and ask for the extension of the 5-year plan, 60, 90 days, whatever we can get. But the other one was to get Pete and Karen some help in regards to, I'm sure that they're very busy. They've got 2 jobs, you know, besides this one, they've got Metro government that they have to work for. So I would anticipate that they could use help in regards to getting the information out as quickly as possible. And I think it's important to, you know, if we don't allow stakeholders and people that are interested in our planning process and everything, I think we're going to be fighting a viewpoint of possibly it's an up-down relationship, that the information is coming from above and is being forced downward to the committee members and everything. So I think it's just very important, and I was glad to hear that we might have an opportunity in a few days in order to actually request that extension of the 5-year plan. I think it's important.
Let me just ask a clarification question. Are you saying that something came out of the advisory committee and stakeholders did not have an opportunity to participate?
Yeah, I think that the last meeting with the 35-minute presentation that we got just 35 minutes prior to the committee itself, you know, the stakeholders wouldn't have an opportunity to know what was on the agenda or what was in the presentation that they might have been interested in, that they would want to comment on. And so therefore they weren't on the meeting itself.
But I guess my question is, was action taken for something that would be presented to the board that did not have that discussion?
Actions itself, what
Yeah.
you had was the first five action plans that were drafted in order to send to the board. I think that's going to be done today. They weren't, apparently, I don't think that they were voted on by the committee, but the plan itself and the actions themselves has been addressed and was part of the draft and the very first initial draft that was going to be sent to the board itself.
Okay, I guess, but what I still don't understand and what I'm trying to get at is something coming to the board. Well, obviously we're not taking any action on anything tonight. And I would agree, nothing should come to the board for action that hasn't been fully vetted by the advisory committee. I just wanted to see if that's what you were saying, is something was going to come to us as a final recommendation from the advisory committee that hadn't been acted on.
It's not a final recommendation, but it is the first draft of any actions and implementation plans. That would be, I think you were going to see that tonight. It was going to be presented tonight. Is that true, Pete?
No, what I give with this document is just an update of the progress of the committee and, the working document, so that when the board does get it, it's not the whole plan. Just trying to keep people informed as to what we're doing. And the recommendations, yes, that came out late, and I apologize for that. There was 1 week in between the last meeting when a lot of it was discussed, and there was probably 5 different versions that I worked on before bringing it back to the committee. And it was short timing, and I apologize for that. But that being said, until the committee really takes a look at things and makes it an action item and gives an up and down, we're basically making this a working document that is always open to change and discussion. So if the impression is that what we are doing at the committee levels is final, that would not be my understanding of what we are doing. I think Bruce would be in a better position to talk about the process that the committee is taking. I don't want to put anything out that is top down. I truly want a open process.
Chairman Schindler, if I may.
Yes, sir.
There has not been any vote that's been acted upon by the advisory committee with regard to the 5-year plan. We've had discussion on the collection, I believe, and we've started the disposal side of things. Pete's been doing the heavy lifting on a lot of the drafts. The only thing I'll say, Pete, we are still awaiting that revised draft that we discussed that after the last meeting we had. You were going to send out a new revised draft after that meeting to all the subcommittee or the advisory committee members, and I don't believe we've received that yet. But
it should have came out with the meeting documents for this meeting,
okay,
and it does include all the advisory committee in that.
Okay, so that is the same document.
It's again, it's a working document. I may have made some additional changes, but I think the changes that I made note of those and color coded where those changes were. Not trying to hide anything. I'm just I did get it out after continuing to work on this document that we can all work on and have input on.
Did I send out a note to the advisory committee members that this is the requested draft so that they're not confused about it as I was?
Sure, we can do that.
But Chairman Schindler, there has been no vote, and we did have good progress. But personally, I believe that we should investigate the opportunity for an extension prior to needing it. We know we have the opportunity for 2 more meetings. We only have 1 scheduled, and then a retreat where we'd be presenting stuff to the board and our progress, with Pete's efforts to date. I know this is the focus item for him, but the rest of us, we're there on a volunteer basis. We've got a lot of ground to cover yet. in all honesty.
Yeah, I hear that. And I think speaking for the board, if I can be so bold as to speak for the board, I don't have a problem at all in staff requesting an extension on this with Division of Waste Management. And if it comes down to it, I wouldn't see a problem at all of asking the board to pass a resolution at some point in time, sending it to the state saying, hey, we need to get this right. Plus, our system is a lot more complicated than probably, 118 other counties in the state. So I wouldn't have any problem asking for an extension at all. And I did not think, Bruce, that anything would come to us in a final form without you all taking the proper action. Since it was not listed on the action items tonight and it was not in an advisory committee report that the 5-year plan was being presented to us, I didn't have that assumption, but I just wanted to make sure that wasn't being, alleged that the advisory committee did that. So thanks, Bob and Bruce both.
Yeah, the one thing that we want to make sure that we follow is what you were mostly concerned about was input from stakeholders, in regards to the plan. And, I gave you my word, we would get the proper input from stakeholders, and we will do so before any vote's taken.
Well, I take you at your word. Pete, do you have you had any, do you have any feel for what's going on with the state with how they would view our request for an extension?
They'll grant it.
Okay. Anything else on the 5-year plan update?
Well, we really didn't do the 5-year plan update. I put that to the advisory committee to do. I kind of changed it where it was.
Oh, okay.
So that was just on the process and telling you that we're going to be having some site visits, and we didn't want to schedule the 5-year the retreat until we knew exactly what some of those things were, and including hopefully an extension.
Okay, and I didn't mean to jump ahead to the advisory committee report. Sorry.
That's good.
Waste district. Well, you already talked about waste district retreat planning.
Bob, may I ask a question here?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
In this discussion, Pete mentioned that he had the color-coded new sections. So the color coding difference that I'm seeing is in collection system implementation schedule, D. Is that the only place that we have additions, Pete, or is there others?
The committee has, what you're talking about is the committee has seen those. We did have a brief discussion about them,
Okay.
but the reason that they're color coded is because we really only had a short amount of time, and I wanted to make sure that people knew that I'm sure it's going to take more discussion.
Okay. I was just checking on if there are things I should be concentrating on.
One of the things that I want to try to do, and this is for selfish reasons to myself, is I want to limit the number of documents that I've got where I'm trying to keep up with everything. If I hold on to one and say, this is the last one that we had at this particular date, while I continue to work on language, I have a second working document or a third working document. So I want to keep the same working document so I don't miss a cut and paste or something like that. So I apologize about that, but I think for my own purposes, it's easier for me to make sure that I'm not going to make a mistake if I try to work from one document.
Are there additional questions of staff on this issue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bob, I've got a question for Pete. So with that said, Pete, then what you're saying is that any particular piece of the draft, of the first draft, can be changed, eliminated, however the advisory committee wants it to go. Is that correct?
As far as I'm concerned, it's a working document until it's not.
Which means what?
It means it's open to discussion and change.
An elimination, if there's such a thing.
Yes.
Any other questions on that? I believe you had something on the screen about the Middletown self-service recycling site.
Yes, sir. Can everybody see that again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, as everybody know, we've been trying to find a new, self-service drop-off site for Middletown, to replace the Urton Lane site, which was extremely busy. I had mentioned at the last meeting that Smith Creek had agreed to host the site. We've been moving forward with that, in the planning stages for the siting of the site, of the facility. So we've been working with Matt Smith's group. We've been working with our engineering group, and our engineering group has been working with planning and design and MSD to put together some, I guess, feelers to a certain degree before we go out and spend a lot of money. So where it sits right now is we've gotten some pretty good feedback from both zoning and MSD, and enough to kind of give us an idea of what we're going to have to do to prepare the site. And what you see here is an overview of that site, and it's not the way it sits today, because this was actually at a time when it was owned by a different company other than Matt Smith and Smith Creek. The site that we're talking about is for this self-serve site. It would enter here and come around and loop. People would be able to drop off and come right back out. So what the proposal is to add a shoulder here with of some type, concrete or asphalt. It would have to have a bit of a buffer here, because one of our issues is that we're touching the floodplain, and you can see where the lighter blue is, I hope, and that is the 100-year floodplain. So if we disturb that floodplain, for every cubic yard that we take out of the floodplain or add to the floodplain, we have to take out a cubic yard and a half someplace else. So we're trying to work out those issues. Current cost estimates is about $100,000 to get this site up and operate. We don't pay anything for any of the other sites that we have. This is a Middletown issue. There isn't the space. We've looked everywhere. We've actually tried to go back to the fire department and offer them money, a lease option, but they're not interested. So this, as of right now, is our only option. So we, at a certain point, we're going to have a decision of moving forward, and I'm hoping that the Waste Management District can put up some of these funds. I'm hoping that maybe we can get some from Metro government or from Metro council districts in that area that would be willing to put up some of these funds, as it's a shared site out there that's so important in the Middletown area. So that's my update on trying to get a new recycling drop-off site out there in Middletown.
Well, the good side to this is relatively close to the old site. And hopefully it would still be as well used.
I believe that what we'll have is some people will continue to use Middletown, or not Middletown, but Whips Mill, because it's actually closer. We'll still have a lot of people use this new site if it's there. It is only like a mile away, but a mile at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon in Middletown can be
Yeah.
like 10 miles anyplace else. So we'll see how the community is going to look at it. We'll see how the Metro Council people, what they feel about it. Our concerns initially has been that Aiken Road is a bit of a busy road. People move along pretty fast there. But the engineering group feels like that they can make this work. So that's what we're going with. There's a few other sites right there. One of them, we just missed getting it. It was purchased and it would have been the perfect site. But we missed and that's unfortunate. Another site, it was fully into the floodplain and we would have had to build it up a lot, which meant that we would have had to pull a lot out someplace else. So we didn't have to do that. So this is really our only option at this point, unless somebody comes up with another place. And we're always willing to listen to that.
Ask a question, Mr. Chairman.
You're on mute, Bob.
All right, I had to mute it to Mary Rose's point. I had to mute it because the phone ringing here. Go ahead, Bruce.
Pete, the $100,000 estimate, is that for improvements as well as a lease? And what would be I guess my concern is, are we going to invest in a long-term solution here? Are we talking multi-year lease at $100,000 a year? Or is it $100,000 for the permitting and improvements and then a smaller lease amount?
100,000 is for the improvements and any kind of planning that has to be taken care of. The lease will be determined after, and I would think that we have to balance the amount of money that we're willing to spend with the term of the lease, meaning how long that lease is. I certainly wouldn't be in favor of spending $100,000 for 1 year lease, and then we're gone. So that would have to be worked out in the lease terms. But I don't think that we would agree to 1 year after spending that amount of money.
And my next question is, in Peter's absence, who do we, I'm sure you and Matt have talked with legal with regard to conflict of interest?
No, it's a good point, and one that I will bring to our legal team and our leasing team.
Thank you.
I have a question. Who would actually be the final say-so in regards to this? Will the 109 board be looking at the arrangements and determining if it's a go or not?
If we have to spend any money, it would be the 109 board, yes.
Mhm.
After all the legal stuff would be taken care of, if we have to spend money to do this, and if we have to spend 109 board money to do this, it would be ultimately a decision that we'd have to make to spend that money.
So if I could clarify a little bit on that, Bob.
Yeah.
I think that the city could move forward without the waste district money, if that's what you was getting to, Bob. But any money that would have to be expended by the waste management district obviously would have to be approved by this board.
Thank you.
Bob, I have a question as well.
Yes, ma'am.
So who will be leasing this? The city, Metro government will be leasing the spot, or will Met 109 board be leasing the spot?
It would be Louisville Metro government.
Okay, so, but I still think if we're gonna spend any 109 board money, we would have to know, or I would have to know beforehand what the terms of the lease are, if it's more than a 1 year lease, as you said, because we don't want to make an investment that's too big for the length of the release. So I think we would need the lease first before we spend money.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
Okay.
The use of the rest of the site is a compost facility.
That's correct. Well, let me take that back, Bob. It's not a compost facility. They don't compost on site. They bring material in and they might process it but it is then shipped up to the site in Indiana to be composted.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Just a real quick related issue. I drove by the Hikes Lane drop-off today, but on the way somewhere else, and I noticed what looked to be some kind of engineering company out there digging holes in the grass around there. Is that part of moving forward to getting those new boxes placed out there?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. All right, moving on. Next item is new business. You have none, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, next item, advisory committee report that I kind of jumped the gun on earlier.
Bob, if I could, I'm gonna back that up a little bit. What I would like to do is ask that the board entertain a motion to add an item to the new business, and that business would be the awarding of a contract based upon the RFP that the board approved some months ago, and this would be for the marketing outreach and education program. And we want to update the board on that. If you guys will have a motion to hear that.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll take a voice vote on adding this to the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those
Aye.
opposed? Hearing no opposition, motion passes. Go ahead with your presentation, Pete.
I'll go from here.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's okay. So we did put out an RFP, as you know, for an education outreach campaign, and we had 4 submissions, and we had a team of people to score those submissions, and one of them scored very highly compared to the others. So we had an in-person interview with that company, and it is called Field Trip. I'm not sure if anyone has ever heard of them, but we were quite pleased, and I wanted to share a few slides kind of from their presentation, actually, in their submission. They submitted the information, and then they kind of in person gave us an overview of what they had already sent us. And the things that I have here are what I wanted to share with you all is basically why we liked them so much above the others, because what they shared was really in line with what we're seeking. And so as you can see, and this slide was part of their submission, that they believe the strategy for us will be at the intersection of those 3 things: environmental protection, audience perceptions, and behavior change. And we all know a lot goes into this involving behavior change for people. So so that's that like intertwined area there in the blue is where we need this campaign. And you can go to the next slide, Pete. So they shared a couple of case studies, and they were actually ones that I have heard of or seen, which was also good. This is through Every Commute Counts. It's the KIPTA program that was once called Ticket to Ride, and they shared with us, especially on this one, behavior change. This is trying to get people to not drive their car and do van pools and log their commutes and everything. So so that was a pretty neat campaign to hear about. And the next one was another these are both very recent that they've worked on, and this was the vaccination campaign that Louisville Metro Public Health and Wellness did. And you can go on to the next slide. part of what I really liked about what they did here was that they used images and people and words and everything that's very specific to certain areas, and they shared about as far as trying to get people to get vaccinated. You know, they had to change their focus over time based on what was happening, and also have a focus in certain neighborhoods or through certain demographics. So I thought it was really neat to see that. And you can go to the next one. I think it shows some of the billboards, and they, you know, had things in Spanish. So some of the little details and elements that we know we're looking for, we could see that in this case study. And their presentation was very strong, and we just felt that we would like to reward them with this campaign. I think the last slide shows our team members. Bruce Burrow is the chair of the advisory committee, and Sandra is the chair of the subcommittee that this fell under. All were part of this, and me and Antonio and Pete. So, and we had a unanimous recommendation that we would like to award the campaign to this company, Field Trip.
I take it they are a local company?
Yes. Yes, and they brought 5 people. They all have a different part in the effort. So, you know, there's someone that kind of focuses on the graphics, and someone that focuses on social media and looking at the impressions and engagement that you get that way. You know, and there's one person that kind of is the liaison and communicates with us. And anyway, it was a good team effort, I thought.
I personally like the idea that they are a local company. That way they don't have to waste time or consume time. I shouldn't say waste time. They don't have to consume time trying to figure out our community.
Yes, we understand they'll still have a lot to learn about waste systems that are here, but overall, I think the other thing I really liked about them is they have found as a company that they want to focus on marketing efforts that are kind of the feel-good efforts. They make you feel good about what you're doing every day, not just selling furniture or something. They, you know, at the end of the day, they want to know that they've helped the community in some way, and they believe that this campaign would be a good fit for this their evolving mission that they have.
Karen, if I may. And the Bob and board members, I will say that I went in a bit skeptical, but this group had good energy. They were very cohesive as a presentation group. Everybody had their part and they knew their part. Limited knowledge with regard to waste and recycling, but I think an eagerness to learn. To the point, my recommendation was get in the truck. It's the easiest way to learn, and they were all for it. I guess I'll leave it at that. I would agree with Karen, and I don't know what Sandra's thoughts are, but I gave it my support after the interview process.
Sandra, are you there? I thought I
Yes.
saw. Do you have any?
No, I would agree with both of them. I think that we need help. I think that education is the way we're going to be effective. And I think that by working with them, we've taken a good first step.
Okay, thank you. Do any board members have any questions of Karen, Pete, or Sandra? Or Bruce? Okay, Pete, what do you want us to do, or what are you asking us to do?
Well, I would ask that the board approve the recommendations of the scoring committee to move forward with this contract.
Okay, so you're not asking, this is not an ask to spend money tonight. This is just ask to go ahead and proceed with negotiations.
Correct. We came to the board before. We went this route and we kind of estimated $100,000 in this regard. So we kind of had an idea what we was talking about. But yes, I believe that this is not a request for money. It is basically a request to go ahead and let the contract.
Okay.
Bob, can I, if
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
if we're gonna grant this contract or approve this contract, then obviously we have to approve money because
I think you're right.
they can't start acting on this unless they have money somewhere that's gonna pay them. I think that we've kind of already approved the $100,000, but I think that when you approve a contract, you're approving the money to pay for the contract. Do I have
Well,
that?
yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I guess I need to direct this with Pete. My interpretation of what you were saying is that you wanted to go ahead and negotiate with them to come up with a contract that you would then bring back to us to approve the contract.
That is my mistake. That is what I said, Bob. My apologies. And I agree wholeheartedly with that. While this, and I think Karen, you correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my understanding is that Sith Group, once we let the contract, they have a minimum amount of money to learn us, which is probably about 50,000. And then some of the products that would come out of there would be on a cost amount that we would say, yes, no, we don't like, we do like type of a process. So that is my fault. I apologize for not telling you right.
Well, I will make a motion that we approve the contract, knowing that it's going to cost us some of the $100,000 that we've already approved. And that we let the legal team work out all of the points of the contract.
We have a motion.
So are we just approving up to $100,000? Is that what we're saying?
I think that's what we've already approved is up to $100,000. We're just agreeing to spend it on this particular company.
Okay.
We have a motion. Do we have
I second it. This is Deidre.
Petra? Okay.
Mhm.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any additional discussion from board members on this motion? Okay, hearing none, since this it does in a way involve expenditure of money, you want to call a roll call, Pete? Vote, Pete?
Sure. Deethra Shipley,
Yes.
Deborah Thompson,
Yes.
Mary Rose Evans,
Yes.
Bob Lee,
Yes,
Susan Hart,
Yes.
and Bob Schindler.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay.
Advisory Committee.
Yeah, and trying to figure out where we left off. Advisory committee report.
Bob, can I make one more comment?
Sure.
I just think it's important that we as a board thank this committee who looked into this for us. I really appreciate, I've been on those committees before and it's not an easy task and I really appreciate the work that they did. So everyone on staff and Sandra and Bruce, we really appreciate what you've done for us.
Yeah, I'll wholeheartedly second that, Mary Rose. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Advisory Committee report.
All right, again, good afternoon, Chairman Schindler. Kind of give you an update on where we are with the advisory or with the 5-year plan development process. We have basically pretty much looked at the background information. We've, well, almost come to terms with the collection system as well as the disposal systems. I believe, if I'm, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, but we've got some draft information on chapter 4, 5, and 6, but as a committee, we have not delved into that yet. And to explain my concern about an extension, we have not really gotten stakeholder input on, well, chapters 2 and chapter 3. Because they've not been available at meetings. It's not for the lack of desire to get the input. It's just, getting the right people to the meetings. So I know, Pete, you sounded pretty confident that you're going to be able to get an extension.
I feel like we will. Yeah. Could you hear me?
I did not hear you, Pete.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I do believe that we will get an extension.
Okay, do you know how long that extension is normally for?
I feel like that they'll give us a pretty good extension. I think that they want us to get it right as much as we want to get it right. So I feel comfortable enough that we would be able to extend and work to get a good plan.
My concern is we only have 2 more meetings prior to what we originally had hoped to be the retreat for the 109 board. And I guess it may be a little bit overambitious to think that we're going to get through the remaining sections in 2 meetings, essentially 2 meetings.
Yeah, if I could, Bruce, what I would say is that a lot of the chapters have been presented. We've went through them. We didn't, as we went through them, we tried to address the things that we saw. Not that they're final documents, but we're trying to get us a document that we can all come together and really kind of have the true vote on. Some of the chapters, like facility siting, is really kind of more in the realm of metro planning and design as part of the land development code. And I have engaged them to work on that. We've went through the enforcement section at the committee level. And pretty much we didn't have a whole lot of discussion about it, but for the most part, the as is and strengths and weaknesses are drafted. We still haven't come back to do any action items. Same for open dumps and litter. We've done a lot of work and we've reviewed a lot of material on the individual chapters. Now that we're into one document instead of the breakout documents, I feel like that it should go a lot faster. Because honestly, from all of the discussions that we've had, I don't think that we're very far off on having something that we can all agree to.
I would say that we're not very far off on what the committee can agree to, with a caveat that we don't know for sure what the community wants to agree with. And until we get that stakeholder involvement, only then will we know what their concerns are. So maybe reconsider some of the issues in the plan. And we have to realize that we're going to be living this plan for the next 5 years, and it's hard to predict the future. But I would be more comfortable if we did have, another couple of meetings to have stakeholder involvement. So that's my only concern. I think we did make great progress at the last meeting. We actually were able to get through the amount of draft that Pete had prepared for us for discussion. We talked about getting documents out quicker, moving forward so that the committee has more time to review those documents, establish their positions or arguments, and be available to discuss those. So that was a good step in the right direction. But I really don't believe that 2 meetings is going to be enough time to cap this off. Maybe I'm just being overly cautious.
Bruce, if I could add, our process here is to get a document that we can put out to public comment. So at the end of this document, it's not done. Because even if the advisory committee comes together and says, this is the document, it still has to go out to public comment. We have to publicize it. They have 30 days to give those comments. And then we have a public hearing for any members of the community to come forward to say what's on their mind. So it's never a done document until the board has a resolution adopting it. So anything can change. While we work through this, we got to remember that this is always a document that can be changed up until the last minute. And we do welcome all the input, but the ultimate public input will be, as is required by statute, through that 30-day public comment period that is required in the public hearing.
And I agree with everything you just said, Pete, but from experience, and I look at this as, let's say, the proverbial siting of a new facility or a new processing plant. We always like to gain public input prior to it going out for public comment, so that the plan is structured to where we're going to avoid as many concerns as possible when it goes to that public comment period. My goal is to have as much public input prior to releasing the plan for public comment, so that we have a lot of this structured already to be in agreement with what the public wants. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I would like to collaborate with the people we represent more upfront than rather after the fact.
I agree with your sentiments, Bruce, 100%.
Mr. Chairman, may I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think Bruce is hitting on what I was basically talking about at the first part of the meeting. It would seem to me like we should know earlier in regards to if we have an extension or not, and we should ask for it as soon as possible. If it requires a resolution from the board, then I think we ought to do that right away, because that then relates to the schedule that we will put together, and it gives us more time in order to get those stakeholders and the committees together. And it doesn't seem like that it'd be a rush to judgment, which is what exactly I was talking about in regards to not getting the information out on a timely basis and everything. So I think that it would be important, in order to, if we need a resolution from the board, we get a resolution to ask for the extension, and to, if it's formalized, to put a formal request for the extension, so that we know how much time that we have, so that we can get everybody together.
Let me say that I agree with everything that Bruce said, and let me urge you, Pete, to not be timid in the length of extension you request. Request something request whatever, as much as we can get to make sure we do this right.
You have my word. Asking for an extension has always been the goal. It's just getting in front of them. I think they know we want an extension. We pretty much ask for an extension for most everything that we do because of who we are and the size of the county. So I would say they they know. We just don't have an extension until we have it in our hand.
Right.
So it, hopefully meeting with them Friday, hopefully we'll have an extension in our hands by Monday.
And from just a pure process standpoint, I don't think we need to take action as the board to request an extension. I think it's fine for you all to go ahead and seek the extension without some kind of action by us. But I threw that out earlier that if that's required, we can always, the board can always get together for a special meeting and make that request. But
I see.
I mean, would you agree that you probably don't need board action to request an extension?
I don't think that we do. I don't think anybody wants an extension more than staff. We need the time.
Okay.
One other point, Bob, to address my issue in regards to the process of moving quickly or whatever, with an extension, will we be able to then reschedule the 2 meetings and go forward with additional meetings in order to make sure that we get stakeholders involved?
As always, the board hasn't taken much action in the past to limit our what the advisory committee does in the area of how many meetings they have or how often they meet or how long they meet. My opinion has always been we ask the advisory committee to do a task, and the advisory committee tells us what they think they need to do for the task. I'm not in favor of putting some artificial deadline on how fast you all have to act as the advisory committee.
Chairman Schindler, I would expect that we will continue to meet twice a month during any extension period we may get, just to ensure that we have a completed document to present to you prior to the deadline.
Yeah, that's fine. Like I said, I'm not in favor of putting pressure on the advisory committee, since the advisory committee is entirely a volunteer committee. So that's why I encourage Pete to get us the longest extension he thinks we can reasonably get. Anything else, Bruce, from the advisory committee?
No, I'm sorry, I probably did not do justice to the work that Pete and staff has put into it and the committee to date, but I believe we are making good progress. But we do have several steps to take yet. And I just didn't want to mislead you and tell you that we're close to being finished. By no way are we there yet.
Again, I appreciate what all you all do.
Thank you.
Staff report.
No report at this time.
Okay. We're down to the last item, announcements.
Next scheduled 109 board meeting is August 24th at 5:30. The residential construction and demolition subcommittee is on hold. That is not meeting. The Self-Haul ICI subcommittee meeting is on hold and will probably be a second advisory committee inserted in that slot. The advisory committee, next advisory committee is August 17th, 2022 at 4, which is a half an hour earlier than what we would normally meet. But we're doing so to try to get more business completed.
Okay. Are there any other questions, comments, issues that anyone wants to bring up at this time before we adjourn? Okay, can we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Anybody opposed to adjourning, please say no. All right, we are officially adjourned at, can't get my screen to come up. Mark down whatever official time it is here.
6:43.
Thank you all very much for your attendance tonight and your participation, and we'll see you all next month.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. all.
Right.